Hello, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Weekend Review. The Fullbright organization has a strong connection to Montgomery County and its interest in international affairs. Dr. Bruce Fowler, a member of the Fullbright Association Board of Directors, is here to comment about Fullbright and the international relations that Montgomery County engages in. After the February shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, the student survivors began working not only in Florida but around the country to counter gun violence and to increase gun control laws everywhere. 3 months later, they're still going strong, and their impact can be felt here in Montgomery County. Fred Evans, a former principal of Gaithersburg High School, has this story and so much more. When people convicted of a crime at trial believe that they did not receive an adequate defense by their attorney, one action they can take is to file a claim with the Montgomery County Courts. Brain Kleinbord, director of the Collateral Review Division at the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office, will explain the process to try to seek help in these cases. The Rock Creek Conservancy was founded to protect our incredibly valuable and picturesque Rock Creek waterway and the parks that are so important to Montgomery County that surround the creek. Jeanne Braha, the new executive director of the Rock Creek Conservancy, will tell us all about the organization and what it does. Bruce Fowler, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
So, I was a Fullbright scholar, you are a Fullbright scholar, but when you say Fullbright, people don't know exactly what it means. So let's start off with what's Fullbright.
This is the flagship international exchange program of the Department of State, and it was founded by Senator J. William Fullbright, who was a senator from Arkansas, who felt that people needed to talk to each other more across borders.
And I think also the intellectuals, if we have people who are decision makers or in the sciences and the arts communicating, we have a lot less chance of going to war against one another.
That's part of it. That's just one part of it. It pays benefits on many levels, both in terms of intellectual exchange, friendships, but as you point out, avoiding war, but also positive economic benefits, that there is a very large amount of money that comes into Montgomery County specifically because of the Fullbright scholars that are coming.
How's that?
The Fullbright program is highly leveraged. The program, people who are supported by it by the U.S. side maybe only pay a fraction of it. And the bulk of support comes from people in other countries.
Those Fulbrighters coming to the United States?
Yes, they're paid for by the Fullbright commissions in their countries, and the leverage is sometimes 7, 8, 9 to 1. So it's a very positive cash flow.
How many? Oh, sorry. Okay. How many Fulbright scholars are there per year? Is there an amount in the United States?
Well, it fluctuates. I think what the number I heard was 8,000.
Wow.
And they go. It's about 50-50.
Both ways.
Both ways. The important thing is that it's not only intellectual transference of information, but as Don started to allude to, a number of the Fullbright people who've been Fullbrighters are heads of state. There are about 30 of them now in foreign countries. So we have friends outside the U.S. and a number of Nobel laureates and other folks who have been.
And Bruce and Don.
There we are. Oh, that's right at the top of the list.
Right. The question I have is and ponders. Right now, it seems like we're in a time in this country where our government is, instead of bringing people together, like what Fulbright was talking about, we seem to be building walls, not just the southern border, but we seem to be dividing and the world. And so how does this jive with what Fulbright is trying to do?
Fulbright runs the other way. It tries to avoid making walls. It tries to avoid conflict by just sitting down and conversing with someone. There are other programs like the International Leadership Program that focuses on J1 visas. These are students usually coming here to do their doctoral research or do study. And these people are here on a J visa, which lasts for 2 to 4 years, and then they go back to their countries. They must. But they have a good experience here, and they carry that with them. And some of these people go on to become leaders in their own countries. So there's a long-term benefit. The other thing I would say, as Don pointed out earlier, is that many of these people are accomplished scholars, musicians, culturally people.
Right.
So they bring culture to whatever community they go to, and that's true in this county.
But they're coming in education. I look here, they're coming in law, they're coming in the environment and,
Right.
and natural resources. It's across a broad range in these international
huge range.
programs.
Yes, and this, it enriches all our lives. I'll say it like that. Other thing I'd like to say is that I've talked before about our wonderful Maryland delegation,
Right.
and their support of Fullbright, and specifically our two senators, Van Hollen and Cardin,
Right.
but also our Jamie Raskin.
Down here in Montgomery County,
In Montgomery
Maryland's
County,
8th Congressional
District.
District.
Yeah, and John Sarbanes is a Fulbrighter also. So we have,
And his father was a Rhodes Scholar, so
Yeah.
it's this in all of this, absolutely.
we do international speak. But the idea is that these are people who understand very well
Right.
the value of all this, both in terms of cultural things. But the other thing I wanted to point out was
Right.
that Maryland and Montgomery County right now, as I understand it, are in the running for a very large facility from Amazon.
Right?
They're talking about 50,000 people. You can just bet that a lot of those people are going to be coming from other countries. Okay, this is an international corporation. Now what that means is that,
We've got about 30 seconds left.
okay, this means that these people would like to be comfortable and feel they're going to a nice place. And this is a nice place, but you need to be there to actually appreciate it. And if they see these other activities going on, this is a progressive place. This is some place I'd like to live and do business.
Well, I want to thank you, Bruce, for helping to ensure that the Fullbright Association is playing its role in helping to make that exactly the Montgomery County a kind of place that we want to have.
We're doing our best.
Appreciate it. Thanks. So we go from a wonderful story where we're looking positively to maybe are we looking positively here coming out of the embers of disaster and gun violence. Fred, welcome back.
Thank you. It is a troubling time, but the one positive note that I saw from this horrific incident, another horrific incident in Florida, was the students who have now mounted on their horses, so to speak,
Sure.
and taken it on. And that's been a voice that hasn't been, it's been there, but it hasn't really been heard. And I think that's been wonderful.
And in the face of all of the pushback, the trolling by folks who see these Marjory Stoneman Douglas folks as being pawns of the media, or were put there to try to.
I really haven't. Well, maybe I'm watching the wrong TV shows. I haven't really heard too much of that this time, but I know it. I know it's out there. And,
Sure.
I know we don't like to give statistics because people forget them, but we have to keep in mind the profound, great problem we have in this country with gun violence. 13,000 people are killed by guns every year, plus the amount of suicide that has occurred from weaponry. It's 62% of the deaths are from weapons. So it just goes on and on and on.
And accidental shootings by kids when they find a gun at home that a parent has.
And the Second Amendment, I had to read it over. I won't repeat it to you, but that was written approved in 1791. Time is a little different now. And in 1791, we also had slavery, and that was changed. And I'm not trying to compare the two, but we have made progress. But in terms of weaponry and gun violence, we have not made much progress. And as was noted, I was a principal of a high school here in Montgomery County. I will never forget what chill went through my bones when I heard about and witnessed the Columbine situation in Colorado.
Let's bring this back to Montgomery County because the big march was in Washington.
That's correct.
A huge number of students and teachers, faculty coming down from Montgomery County and elsewhere in this area. What impact do you think the interaction of our students and staff and faculty with the Marjory Stoneman folks and leadership is? Do you see some?
I think it
impact
has
here?
I think it had an impact, but it's got to be more than one time. You see these marches and then we forget about it. Then the next incident occurs, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or brush.
You're being realistic.
But the fact that we have a concept of school shootings and we accept that as,
Right.
oh, well, yeah, we had another school shooting today,
Right.
is, and it's not just school shootings,
Right,
obviously.
right. Road rage.
There are many, many other kinds of incidents. And the stat that I saw, once again, statistics that I saw was just really troubling. That for every 100,000 people in the United States, 3.5 rate are killed by guns, and the closest one to us is Canada, 0.5, Japan, 0.011%.
Yes.
So there's an issue that we have in this nation that needs to be remedied, and I'm sure you see.
As a former principal and someone who spent your career in education, I'm curious, what do you make of the arguments about arming teachers?
We will have to have another show for that.
Right,
one.
right.
Among the insane proposals, I'm going to give you my direct answer. That is one of the most insane I've ever heard. To remedy a problem, let's arm teachers. And the kinds of situations that could occur with a teacher carrying or a staff member, not just a teacher,
Right.
carrying a weapon in a building, the variables are just incredible.
Yeah.
Increasing security, it's much more difficult to get into schools now, but they're still, in many cases, wide open. You can't close down sporting event. There's all kinds of those situations. I confiscated some weapons in my career. Fortunately, never had a negative. Well, it was negative confiscating them, but never had a situation like some of the ones we read about.
We've got about a minute left. Where do you see this going?
Well, I see that there has to be an energy, and we blame the NRA, and that's always the whipping post, so to speak. But we need to look at our elected officials and getting reasonable legislation passed. The amount of what Maryland did, for instance, one of the strictest gun control pieces of legislation, that needs to be more national, and the discussion needs to continue.
Can I jump? I just wanted to say that I've lived in several southern states, and there's a cultural aspect to this that goes very deep, where people are carrying guns in their glove box of their cars.
Right.
10 seconds left.
Okay, and everyone has a gun. I mean, what for?
I know, and case closed.
Okay. Amen.
All right. That story will
Glad
be
we solved
revisited
that.
over and over again.
Yeah.
We have to take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Brian, welcome. Your first time on the show.
Thank you, Don.
It's great to have you here. This collateral review, tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's important at the state's attorney's office.
Sure. So what most people know about the criminal justice system is the defendant has a trial, they're entitled to take an appeal from that, and that appeal can go all the way up through the Maryland courts here and all the way up to the Supreme Court if they so choose.
Right.
Collateral review is really what it means, collateral, separate from the criminal case.
Okay.
So after you've exhausted your direct appeal, there are many other remedies that are available to a defendant, post-conviction, quorum nobis, habeas corpus, that are a separate civil proceeding where they can attack the conviction.
You know what's great? One of the things about laws you just mentioned is for all of those frustrated Latin students, they can continue on with their Latin studies.
It's the only area where it's still important. My son takes Latin, and hopefully he'll be able
Res
to use
ipsa
it someday.
loquitur,
Sure.
all these great things. Isn't this just a matter of sour grapes that you're talking about? That hey, I lost my case. Let me blame somebody. Let me blame the attorney. As an attorney myself, aren't we all perfect?
No. It's all attorneys are not perfect. It's not really a matter of sour grapes. It's a statutory post-conviction, for instance, is a statutory remedy. You have to be incarcerated or on probation to file a post-conviction claim.
Okay.
So it's there. Defendants, they would be foolish not to pursue a post-conviction claim if they're serving life or 50 years in prison. So it's there for them. The success rate is not high. As I tell people, the further you move away from the conviction,
Right.
it's more of a long shot for the defendant. But there are cases. There's one celebrated case now out of Baltimore that was they did a serial podcast about the case.
Right.
That's another show altogether. But the point is that
Is a serial coming to Montgomery County?
no, I don't. Not that I know about. No, I don't have a scoop on that. But the defendant in that case has won post-conviction,
Right.
and the court has said is entitled to a new trial. So it does happen. It's just not likely.
What are some of the reasons serious reasons? Again, not just the sour grapes, but what are some of the faults that lawyers have committed that they shouldn't have that come across your desk?
So in post-conviction, the most common claim is ineffective assistance of counsel, meaning that the trial lawyer messed up in some way. They didn't call a witness that they should have called. They didn't object to a piece of evidence that they should have objected to. But the Supreme Court has set a very high standard for defendants to overcome. The defense counsel is presumed to have acted reasonably in the trial, and the defendant has to overcome that burden and show a serious error on the part of their lawyer.
Because if there wasn't a high standard, then you'd have tons and tons and tons of cases, I would assume, if
Yes.
the bar was real low, so to speak.
I think generally it's important for the criminal justice system to have remedies available
Right.
to defendants. We all know about cases where people have been wrongly convicted. So there need to be remedies out
Right.
there. But yes, it should be difficult for the defendant to demonstrate that and invalidate a conviction that might be 30, 40, 50 years old.
Right.
And again, it's not common for them to be able to do that.
When looking ahead, where do you see the challenges moving forward for your office? We have the immigrants, the real sort of, I would say, it really is anti-immigrant with this current administration, and this is a community that's a majority minority community, and the immigrant community in Montgomery County is one that we have sort of held close to us, and I would think there's a lot of opportunities to take advantage of immigrants, language issues and whatnot by unscrupulous attorneys. So is this something that you see growing, or has this been an issue in Montgomery County?
Yes, and I think that we should. I think the way we treat immigrants in Montgomery County, and we should be welcoming to them. The ones that are here who are law-abiding and
You have about 40 seconds left.
they should be separated from the immigrants who come here and commit serious crimes, and where immigration issues come up most frequently in the work that I do is in guilty plea cases,
Okay.
based on a Supreme Court case from about a decade ago that said that defense attorneys have to advise their client about the risk of deportation if they're pleading guilty.
So they plead guilty, then that puts them on a fast train for deportation. If they didn't plead guilty and go through, they might have a chance to avoid deportation.
Well,
Potentially.
perhaps, but the point about guilty pleas is they need to know about certain things
Right.
before they plead
Okay.
guilty, and
Gotcha.
and if they're not told about deportation, then
Okay.
the attorney maybe hasn't done their job, and they might be entitled to relief in those cases.
We've run out of time, unfortunately. We can keep going on this, more Latin and all
I
of
would
that.
love to come back and do
but
that.
thank you for your good work,
Thank you.
and look forward to having you come back again.
Thank you.
Jeannie,
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, Rock Creek Park is one of my favorite places. It's where I grew up on Rock Creek Park. I got down on one knee and asked my wife to marry me in Rock Creek Park.
Wonderful.
I used to live in our first house was right on Rock Creek Park, so it's near and dear to me. So you're near and dear to me, Jeannie, and welcome and congratulations on being the new executive director of Rock Creek Conservancy.
Thank you. I can count the number of days I've served in this position on more than two hands now.
Oh,
so
good.
I'm starting to run out of toes, but I still am very new and delighted to be part of Rock Creek Conservancy, which exists to protect Rock Creek and its parklands as a natural oasis for all people to appreciate and protect. So happy to hear you're among those.
Absolutely, and I don't know of anybody in Montgomery County who's not, because it is. I mean, it's this wonderful green space that comes right up the middle of the county, and and does so much for us. And so what attracted you to this job? What was it? Because you've had a successful career, as I looked at your bio, and what was it about this?
Yeah, well, my career has spanned environmental education and partnering with public lands, and also specifically focused on watershed and water protection. So in many ways, this job brought together many of those things that I've held dear to my heart and committed my professional life to. But I think importantly, I also had a very personal connection to the park and the creek. When my son was little, we loved to, I called it a triathlon. We would run to many, one of the many playgrounds that
Right.
existed in the Montgomery County parks, and then go down and see the creek. That kind of was I guess we were running instead of cycling. But also, Rock Creek Park is a really special place. We have the first urban national park in the
Wow.
U.S. is
Right.
Rock Creek
I didn't
Park,
know
the
that.
part in
That's amazing.
the District of Columbia.
Right.
And we're really fortunate that the Montgomery County part of that, the 33 miles of creek, is protected by Montgomery County. So it's a special place that we all have as an amenity, but also have an obligation to protect.
Could I ask a question about this? Our Rotary Club every year does a cleanup in Rock Creek Park,
Yes.
and I am amazed at the quality and the quantity of the things that they fish out of there.
Look, there's so much crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all kinds of things, and I'm wondering. So, where does this stuff come from? Is it people?
People.
Well, I know it's people, but I'm wondering: is it people visiting the park who are just discarding the stuff, or is it coming down
Is
from
it
up
another
above?
waterway? Yeah.
Yeah,
So the trash that we find in the park, and Rock Creek Conservancy is part of a broader Potomac watershed-wide effort every spring. Our extreme cleanup engaged more than 1,000 Montgomery County residents this year, and that's an annual event, so come out next April. But that trash doesn't come from the park per se, it comes from the entire watershed, which is all of that land. It's about 80 miles that drains every time it rains. All of that water then runs down into the creek. So the park, being a beautiful buffer alongside the creek, is the not so fortunate recipient of it. So we're grateful for your efforts to clean that
the
up.
trap. Well, but it also says how much people value it if you're getting 1,000 people every year to come and
Get the tires and everything else
take
out of
pride in it. Yeah.
We got only about 2 minutes. What do you hope to do with where's the Jeanne Braha? What's the path?
Well, it's really about the Conservancy and the work that we do with more than 5,000 volunteers a year that really help us fuel these efforts to protect the creek and its parks. So having people like you, but I would love to not need a cleanup in the future, to have all those people that come in and volunteer in the park to clean up the trash, help us protect the source of that trash by disposing of things properly. But also there's a lot of work to be done in terms of stormwater management in Montgomery County and in the district, to keep all of that water, instead of having it run off, catching trash and other pollutants coming down into the park, having it really soak back into the land, which is tricky in an urban environment like ours. But there are a lot of things we can do. Right here in Durwood, about a mile from the studio, actually, we have just, with support from the Chesapeake Bay Trust, we're actually planting right now a conservation landscaping piece in a homeowners association. And we would love to work with other homeowners associations to put in this sort of green landscaping that soaks up that rain before it goes into the creek.
Sure. We have about 30 seconds left. I know the county is very supportive of that. There
Indeed.
are benefits that go, and all this. What are you optimistic in your number of days on counting on toes and fingers?
I am optimistic. I think the number of people that support the Conservancy and specifically come out and give their time and efforts is really heartwarming. I think the personal connection that so many people have to the creek and the park, even if they didn't propose in the park, that everybody I know has some memory. But there's still a lot of work to be done, but I know our collective ingenuity can do it.
Amen. I've been a member for 2 years for the
Thank you.
Conservancy, so I invite everybody, please join. And I want to thank you all for joining me today. This has been a great show, and I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.